Developed nations responsible for climate change should not backslide on the promises made at COP26. This is word from Minister of Forestry and Fisheries and Environmental Affairs, Minister Creecy. COP27 is underway in Egypt, and world leaders have been urged to honour their commitments to fighting climate change. eNCA's Siphamandla Goge caught up with Minister Creecy a little while earlier.
COP27 is underway in Egypt. World leaders continue to flock to the country to try and put more pressure on these ongoing talks. A number of priority areas are being put forward by the developing world, including South Africa. The issue of loss and damage, the issue of climate finance is set to take center stage when the ongoing talks gain momentum next week. U.S. President Joe Biden has just arrived in Egypt. He has apologized for former President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw the United States of America from the landmark Paris Agreement. We are now joined by Minister Creecy, who leads the South African delegation. Minister, thank you very much for your time. You've been here now a number of days. President Cyril Ramaphosa was here. Let's start with your view for now. Based on your assessment, how are these talks going?
Well, it's obviously early days to be able to determine the outcome, but I think that there are going to be three important issues on the agenda. First of all, we have to make sure that developed countries who are primarily responsible for the climate crisis do not backslide on the commitments that they made at COP26. Secondly, we want to see a clear work program around adaptation. Across the developing world, issues of food security, water security, healthcare are major issues in the context of climate change, and we want to make sure that that, together with the issue of early warning systems, is woven into a concrete work program that in due course can attract climate financing. And of course, the big sticky issue at this COP is going to be the question, as you said in your introduction, of loss and damage. Many countries, including our own, have already faced cataclysmic climate events. A recent study by the World Bank estimates that developing countries are spending between 3 and 12% of their GDP already dealing with climate change and the impacts of climate change. As developing countries, we are saying we can't wait for some distant process of setting up a facility for the financing of loss and damage, and we need to see immediate action arising from this COP to assist developing countries to deal with loss and damage and to find a way out of the indebtedness that many of our countries face.
Even though it's going to be one of the difficult things to achieve, but the fact that at least that agenda point on loss and damage is getting some traction, it's being put on the agenda, it's a positive step.
Indeed, I think we're very glad that this is on the main agenda of COP27, and it does mean that once the agenda is on the main item, then of course there does need to be progress. We believe that part of the solution to this, in addition to public financing from developed countries in terms of their commitments under the Paris Agreement, is the reform of the international finance system. When a country faces a cataclysmic climate event, there needs to be debt restructuring. The multilateral development banks need recapitalizing, and of course we need greater use of non-debt instruments to help countries in the face of the climate crisis.
Let's talk about the most important talking point here concerning South Africa, the country's just energy transition partnership. President Ramaphosa met with some of the world leaders who have contributed to that fund. How is it being implemented? First of all, let's talk about the financing aspect of it. Many South Africans are worried and are asking a question. Is this a loan or a grant, this $8.5 billion that was committed by developed world?
Well, there is a grant component, but the grant component is small. And this was a concern that President Ramaphosa raised on Monday evening when he met with what we call the IPG partners, President Macron, Prime Minister Sunak, Chancellor Scholz, and President Ursula von der Leyen of the EU, as well as John Kerry from the United States. Some of the money is in the form of concessional loans, and our National Treasury has really scrutinized those loans to make sure that we are being lent this money at a rate which is significantly lower than the amount of money that we could borrow on the open market. And then, of course, there would be guarantees that would allow for lending by various development institutions. And again, we are working hard to make sure that this money does not come at the same high rate that it comes on the open market.